World War II was the deadliest military conflict in history. Between 70 to 85 million people perished, or about 3% of the 2.3 billion people on Earth in 1940. Deaths directly caused by the war are estimated at 50 to 56 million, with an additional estimated 19 to 28 million deaths from war-related disease and famine. Let's let our imagination run wild. What if you jumped into a time machine and found yourself at a recruiting office during World War II? What job would be the most dangerous to sign up for? In this video, we listed the top 5 worst combat roles in World War II. Let's get started. Number 5. Field telephone layers and radio teams. Most soldiers know you should aim for the antennas on the battlefield, and that made a common POG job one of the most dangerous on the front lines in World War II. In order for the front lines to keep in contact with command, soldiers would set up radio bases to relay messages, but this involved physically laying wire for the messages to travel along. The problem with this job is that the wires would often run through areas that were not exactly safe, and some poor soldiers would have to walk or crawl through these areas with a spool of telephone wire in their back. The cable dogs tasked with running the telephone wires would frequently be shot by snipers, hoping to stop enemy communications. Similarly, both radio carriers and cable dogs were targeted by planes and artillery units. Number 4. Submariners. In World War II, as they did in World War I, submarines were widely used by both sides as the ultimate weapon of a naval blockade, sinking large numbers of both merchant ships and warships, resulting in either paralyzing the enemy's military industry and war effort by causing severe shortages of war materials and products and preventing maritime troop transfers, or forcing the enemy to dedicate enormous resources to anti-submarine warfare in order to prevent that from happening. The submarine is the classic weapon of the war of attrition, where victory is achieved by the side which inflicts significantly more losses in men and material to the enemy than it suffers, and monthly ship tonnage loss counts reflect success or failure better than battle maps. The submarine's ability to attack almost anywhere and anytime in total surprise and with devastating results makes it a highly efficient weapon in which a small crew of about 40 to 80 sailors can do more damage than 1,000 sailors in a battleship, and for a fraction of the cost. But it does not mean that submariners' job was easy. They had to descend beneath the surface of the ocean in overpacked steel tubes, so how could the job be any more dangerous than you would already expect? First of all, the main anti-ship weapons used on the submarines, namely torpedoes, were prone to what is called a circle run. It happens when a torpedo drifts to one side and so goes in a full circle, striking the sub that fired it. If that didn't happen, the sailor still had to worry about diesel fumes not venting or the batteries catching fire. Both scenarios would end with the crew asphyxiating. That's not even counting the numerous mechanical or crew failures that could suddenly sink the vessel. Number 3. Merchant mariners. The military branch that took the worst losses in World War II is barely considered a military branch. Mariners risked their lives supplying all the needed material from America to Britain, Russia, and the Pacific. Shipping became an integral part of both German and Allied strategy early in the war. Mariners lived in constant fear of surprise attacks. The often slow-moving ships and the civilian merchant mariners who maneuvered them were easy targets for enemy fire. German submarines attacked Allied merchant ships in the Atlantic, disrupting supply chains to America's allies. As a result of these attacks, merchant mariners experienced some of the earliest action of the war. With such dangerous conditions, why would men enlist in the merchant marine? Some were too old to serve in the traditional branches or were rejected for medical reasons, but still wanted to volunteer for the war cause. Nevertheless, rumors about the nefarious motives of the mariners for signing up circulated among the public as well as soldiers, sailors, and marines. One was that members of the merchant marine were draft dodgers looking for deferment from real service. But according to the draft board, service in the Merchant Marine was tantamount to military service, even if it was not formally recognized as such, and men found by the local board to be actively engaged at sea may well be considered as engaged in active defense of the country. Number 2. Torpedo pilot. The single most effective weapon against enemy ships was the torpedo. They had their own propeller and fuel supply. However, this meant their range was limited, and planes or ships carrying the weapon would have to get dangerously close to the enemy ship for an effective shot. Several countries came up with the same idea to give their torpedoes increased range and accuracy. This idea involved convincing someone to physically steer the torpedo as it was traveling toward the enemy ship. The pilot would sit in a capsule on top of the torpedo, which didn't contain any explosives, and drive directly towards an enemy ship. When he was in range, the lower torpedo would be activated and propel forwards to make an impact while the pilot steered clear of the explosion. This tactic didn't seem to work very often, and the pilot would either get caught in the explosion or would be unable to release the torpedo after activating, leading to many unplanned suicide charges. Some versions were even worse and just had seats on top, with the pilot simply having to bail off and swim when it was lined up with an enemy ship. Number 1. Ball turret gunners. The everyday lives of most aircrew, unlike other servicemen, were a unique mixture of danger and normality. At one moment the men were on a bombing raid, a few hours later they were safely at home in the pub. Bomber operations were extremely stressful and frequently perilous, with a random chance of death or horrific injury. Flying was physically and mentally demanding, and constant concentration was needed for many hours at a time. Ball turret gunners flying over enemy targets had one of the war's most dangerous jobs. In addition to the standard fears of being shot down, these gunners had to deal with the fact that they were dangling beneath the aircraft without any armor and were a favorite target of enemy fighters. To make it worse, their parachute didn't fit in the ball, and so they would have to climb into the plane if the crew was forced to bail out. They were also more exposed to the elements than other aircrew members. Also, turret gunners' oxygen lines could freeze from extremely low temperatures. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Also, visit our second channel with military power comparisons. See you next time.